Hi, my name's Petrina. I am in sunny central Queensland. We're on the border of tropical and subtropical. Lately it's been a little bit more temperate. It is the middle of winter for us and we have actually experienced a cold winter for once. Usually our winters last about 2 days, but for the last month we've actually had rain and maybe below 5 temperatures at night time, which is cold for us. We've had a lot of cold wind as well, so the garden struggled a little bit to power on. Usually winter is our growing phase here, anywhere from April to end of September, October. It's getting a bit warm. After that we have to pump a lot of water onto the garden and a lot of mulch to keep everything going, and then we experience a lot of pests as well. It's workable though, but right now this is the best time of year to grow, so I'm going to show you around my garden. This is one of our raised garden beds. It is a lot larger than what we actually need, and it's a lot higher and contains a lot more material. Could possibly go into 2 beds, which would be ideal, but we've made it now and I filled it up twice. I'll have another video on that. It will be in the description. I'll link it below. At the moment it's topped up with paunch. It's actually sunk down a little bit because, as I said, I've just filled it up again, and it is basically a giant compost bin, and I plant into it straight away because it's not hot enough to not plant into it, and it's just producing a massive amount of nutrients. And it is still a little bit warm, but because it's winter the plants don't seem to mind. So what I've got in here is a lot of leafy vegetables because the paunch that I've got in here is very nutrient dense in nitrogen, so leafy things are perfect. I've got lots of lettuce, I've got cabbages, I've got just a few onions scattered around, bunching onions that is. I also have flowers in here to attract pollinators. Not that these need it because they don't fruit, they're actually just producing leaves, but I do want the pollinators to come around for other things that are around here like beans and tomatoes, so they're perfect to attract into this space. Along here I have Anaheim Chilis. We love to stuff our capsicums, and these are perfect banana shaped ones that look fantastic and taste fantastic. And what else have I got in here? I have a few different brassicas in here. I've got red cabbage here, I've got some green cabbage down the end, and down this end I have got broccoli. It might actually be broccolini, to check the packet. I've got some spinach. In amongst everything I've planted lettuce because they'll grow faster than the cabbage, and I'll be able to harvest them, and then the cabbage will fill up the space. So every little space right here is utilised. I am definitely one that is impatient in the garden, and I like to pack every bit of space until I see that it's too full, but that's fine because I put so much in. I can go in and harvest things early. There's so much in here that it's not going to bother it one bit if I'm coming through and plucking things out of it, even if it's half mature, because there's other things that will then take up that space and become mature, so we'll be able to harvest things in succession. But also I'll come in while things are half grown and put more stuff in. I'm a poly planter. I like to have a lot of different things in the garden at once, and a lot of people call it companion planting. I'm more along the lines of just being a poly. If you've got like a monocrop in one space, if you get a pest or a disease, you're going to wipe out that whole space. So I'll not only have these things planted here, I've actually got them planted in some of the other gardens as well. And I think it's better if you have a mix of different things, and also things that either attract good pests or just support the other plants in general. Down on this side of the house there's a bit of a retaining wall that is a step up onto the house platform, and all of this here I have just turned into vegetable garden. It in summer gets extremely hot because the top part of it's all rocks and of course the sun just beats off them, but in winter it's perfect because it keeps the soil nice and warm. On this corner here I replanted or transplanted these different eggplant and some chilies that I had in the raised garden bed last year. I had filled the raised garden bed up, planted into it, and because it's a compost type structure it settled right down, and these were still powering over summer, so I pulled them out and put them into this garden and then filled that garden bed up again and planted into it for this year. I'll show you. These different types of eggplants are just a pack that I got from the hardware store. In amongst here I have got these little yellow cherry pear tomatoes that sprouted up from last year. I hadn't put them in again this year, so I'm glad that they popped up because they're a delicious little cherry tomato. In amongst here too I've got sunflowers, and these ones here, that is a green mustard. And in here as well I've also planted flowers so they can bring in the pollinators. These tomatoes I'll just stake or even just let them sprawl over the rocks. That's what I did last year. I've got some sage in here as well. If we just look down this side, these are the chilies and they're still producing. They didn't miss a beat. They might look a bit ragged, but once I picked all these chilies I'm going to trim them back and they'll just bush out again. As you can see they're already starting to, so I'll snip that back to there. In here again I like to interplant everything, so I've got nasturtiums, calendulas. Here I've just transplanted in some kale. The purple kale doesn't ever seem to do quite well here, but anyway, we'll see if we can get it going. This is a green manure crop that I had some seeds from. I just chucked it in here because all of this here was a bit of a wreck. Had a pumpkin vine all the way through it and a heap of weeds. So I just tore all that out. I have a little compost. I actually put a lot of little composts in my garden, let them do their thing, keep chucking the weeds in it, and then when they're composted I'll spread it out when I'm doing a changeover of plants. Over here, that is a patch of Easter egg radish. Radish grows super fast. I will be eating that in about 4 or 5 weeks. By 6 weeks they're definitely ready to pick. If we keep looking down the rock wall, I love a variety of colour. So here I've got the purple climbing beans. I've just got them from the hardware store. Some things I'll just pick up from the hardware store. Other things I will plant from seed, and I get all my seeds online, and generally those seeds are spectacular. They'll come up in a couple of days. Sometimes the seed might be old, doesn't come up at all, but that's fine because they'll just replace them. In here I've also got a lettuce and some spinach. These are the Italian heritage tomatoes. I have to stake those up. I did have a trellis here for them, but I've actually used that down the end for the tomato tropic, and they'll power on a bit more than these ones. These ones, I don't know. Anyway, we've got some Melissa that over summered. These are beans. These are the burgundy bush beans. Yeah, and some more flowers. This is the first time I've grown this Italian heritage. I don't know whether they're going to do great here. They look like they're doing fine. They've got flowers. We'll see how they go. It is a little bit cool here at the moment for beans and cucumbers, so these are really struggling. It's hard when we're on that border of tropical and subtropical, and especially this year because it's actually been cold. These type of things struggle. You can see on their leaves that they're not doing so well. When I sowed these seeds they took a little while to germinate because just when I sowed them we had a really cold spell, so it took them a while. I actually put some plastic over them to try and warm them up a little bit, but as you can see they've started to climb, but they're not loving it so much. Anyway, leave them there and see how they go. The cucumbers, they are struggling too. Anyway, we will still give them a shot, and if they keep struggling, I will just whack them out and put something else in and wait till it warms up. Give the new ones a crack. I've got dill here with those because dill is a great, keeps the pests away from the cucumber. You get sage and radish. I just love it to fill spaces with radish, especially these really fast growing radishes, because I'll be eating them. You can eat the greens and cook them up, they're delicious. So I've got radish planted in amongst those. There's some more cabbage. I just love to fill every space. So that there is a little broccoli. This is a lemon basil that over summered. There's all the seeds and that seeds popping up everywhere. Here, oregano that over summered. Here, I will put my seedlings in these old milk bottle with the clear ones. It just helps them get going. Those ones can come off actually. And I'll put them on some other ones. They're doing really well. So they're broccoli. These ones are more cabbage. This here is calendulas. I've actually got a couple of lettuce in here as well. So everything's mixed up, but they all do well together. They all mature at different times too. So these will be mature before the broccoli, but the broccoli are tall and these are a bit more low to the ground. The calendulas will be fine in amongst it, but the lettuce will be harvested way before these, and those will fill up that space. Here is another basil. This is a sweet basil. I've let this just keep going because I want to get some seeds off it. We had some trouble with some basil that I got from the hardware store up in the top garden, which is a bit of a pest, but anyway, we'll work with it. I had a couple of seeds left over from last year for the big lettuce leaf type basil, and hopefully it's not too rich and wet in here for those. We'll just see how they go. This is paunch. It's about 1/2 foot deep, and this is something tomatoes and lettuce and everything love. It's the same as what's in the raised garden bed. So in here I have planted some more lettuce. I just put all the seeds in the ground and pretty much all of them come up, so end up with lettuce everywhere, which is fine by me. I am really impatient with my seedlings too. As soon as they've got a little bit of growth or even their second leaves, I'm whacking them into the ground. I want to see them get going. So these tomatoes barely had their second leaves and I've popped them into the ground, and they pretty much doubled in size in a couple of days, so they're fine. These are the tomato tropic. The tomato tropic is meant to be a good species for the warmer climates, and they experience less pest and disease. It's the first time I've grown them, so I'll just see how they go. Oh look, we've got a little friend. Lovely. We love all our garden species here. Now as we come to the end of this rock wall garden, I have put in about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago even, I put in the snow peas and these climbing beans of the Blue Lake, and they're starting to get flowers on them now. Oops, as you can see up here, there are flowers, there's lots of flowers. I've got them on a trellis so they'll grow up nice and tall. In here I've got carrots down the front, little volunteer basils, which is great, we want them to come up. The carrots, pretty good spacing just from whacking them in the ground. I haven't had great germination with carrots this year up in the top garden, mostly probably because they were dried out. Last year I did have them covered. Actually had put them in here previous to this lot and had them covered and they didn't sprout either, so it could possibly be the seed. Carrots like to stay moist the whole time until they germinate, and then you can just water them like normal. But these ones got to come up while we had a week-long stint of rain. So these are the Nandies and they're looking lovely. They'll grow lovely. This one here is our new raised garden bed. It is only half the size of the larger one that we made last year. As you can see, it's a bit of a wreck at the moment, but it's been filled up exactly the same, like a giant compost, and then I've put the paunch on top of that. I will plant into this shortly. At the moment though, I've been using it to trick all my seeds to think it's warmer than it is. All the heat that comes up from the compost keeps that soil warm and all the seeds sprout beautifully. So all of these will get moved down to this patch, which I have covered because the critters get in here, including the dogs. Here she comes. Oh, so kohlrabi. I've got purple and green kohlrabi. Over here I've got, man, I can't even read my own writing. Who knows? Oh, so they're the Brandywide Red Tomatoes. And they don't seem to be sprouting, but hopefully they will still come up. It could be just because it's been cold. Sometimes if seeds are older, they take a little bit more to germinate, so I won't worry too much. These have only been in for about 4 days, so while some of these things pop up really quick if the seed's really new and nice, some of the things still take a little bit longer. Here I've got more... What are they? More flowers. Here I've got some gourds. I've also got some pumpkins in over here, different types of pumpkins and zucchinis. I have got some mulberry trees that are going to go in, 2 different mulberry trees. They went dormant, so they were half price, and so now they're starting to get going, so I'm going to get those into the ground. This very exciting wall is the back of our shed. This is where Cal does all his lathe work and where I just create a big mess for him to walk around. And the back of this garden here is a bit of an unusual space because it is fully shaded and cold in winter, and in summer it just gets sun beating down on it and can dry out very fast. I've just had our chook, one chicken, in here for about a month, and she's just been wandering around aimlessly with no friends. I've recently just got her some new friends that will hopefully actually lay eggs and not just be freeloaders, and they are now back over that way underneath our black sapote tree, giving it a bit of nutrient. It won't be ready until the end of August, so they're just all on there looking lovely. And so this garden here, after I moved the chook, I gave it a bit of a scrape. It was growing, the hay bales that I had in here, one in particular was absolutely chock-a-block with mycelium, which is the gorgeous nutrient that every garden needs to grow spectacular, because it's just full of microbes and makes that soil absolutely beautiful. I think I've got some footage, you can have a look at that and see what it looks like. So that particular bale, I have pulled patches of that out and stuck it in the different garden beds, and hopefully that will increase the garden life in that soil and increase the vitality of all of our plants. I made a couple of little composts as well with the stuff that I scraped up, and because I planted all of the mustard seeds, I had 2 packets, so one was a purple mustard, purple giant, and the other one was a green, and 150 seeds. I'm pretty sure that the purple giant sprouted every 150 seeds, and then the green one, out of 150 seeds, I only had 4 come up. So the 4 I've placed in spaces that I will know to look at and keep after, and then the 150 I've just spread out everywhere because, like I said, I hate wasting a seedling. I will find a space for that seedling. So anyway, I had planted quite a few over in those gardens and spread them out and even put them in patches. I think even though I love being a poly planter and having lots of different plants in, I also think it's spectacular when you just see a bunch of something. And because in here a bunch of something isn't like a monocropper farmer where all you see is that one thing. It's just like this beautiful patch of cottage garden looking thing. So in here I planted 4 sets, which would have ended up being maybe 50 plants of giant mustard just behind me. So in this garden it is going to look incredible. Just because I sit down doesn't mean it's time for hey, stop digging that hole. Go on. Behind me, beside me, and in front of me is my kitchen garden. Mostly I will plant as much as I can in this garden just behind me. The garden beside me I have reclaimed last year, and it's now struggling this year because I reclaimed it from some mother-in-law's tongue and an old hedge. So all the nutrients that were in there I spent up last year, and this year it's struggling a little bit. So that's a garden that I have to amend and fix up. I'll talk about that in a separate video. And the garden in front of me has always just been ornamentals, but last year I put some potatoes in pots and they did okay. And this year I put in a sweet potato vine which took off, but the sweet potatoes are only tiny under the ground. I find them occasionally when I dig a hole. And I just threw in a packet of coriander and I think it's pak choi in there, and they're taking off now, which looks excellent. Very delicious. So I'll show you this garden behind me. This garden is right out front of my kitchen window, and I try and cram as much in here as I can. Almost every year I've got tomatoes at the end of the bed, and they always do exceptional. One year in particular I dug a heap of fish frames into the ground and they absolutely took off. They were incredible. The fruit on them were huge. But this year, because I made fish emulsion a couple of years ago, I'm still using that. So now I just amend the beds with that and give them a spray every couple of weeks, and they do just as good. In this space here, I have a daylily. That's an ornamental, but you can eat the flowers out of that. You can stuff them with cheese and things like that. And that is comfrey. I'll make a fertiliser out of that. I've got oregano at the back. Here are the Bellotti Rooster beans, and they're doing okay. They don't grow very tall, but they still need a little something to climb onto. In here I've got spinach, and that's a flower. Spinach, lettuce, kale. That is chamomile, and that is Melissa. And these chives, they have been there for as long as we've been here. They just keep growing and growing and growing. They are literally more than 16 years old. They just keep going. There's some spearmint in here. It's a little bit of oregano. This is my compost. I just keep chucking the grass clippings on there. Just keep chucking them, chuck, and then chuck some manure on there sometimes, and just keep building that up, and it goes back down. And then in the summer I'll spread that all out. Here's our tomatoes for this year. This year I just got a punnet because I was late getting things in. We had a lot of rain. I was away for a couple of months, and so I just got a tomato harvest pack, and it's 4 different tomatoes, and I don't know, I'll just see how they go, but they seem to be doing really well. I've been stuffing them up and tying them sometimes. A couple of them are determinate, so they'll only grow so big, but the one on the end looks like it's an indeterminate because it's long and stringy and it's heading up, so we'll have to tie that one up. In here I've got volunteer corianders and some then corianders that I've put in there. These are marigolds and they need tipping. I put in basil and it struggled, and I'm not actually sure whether I have put too much nitrogen and they ended up with nitrogen burn, but I did get these ones from the hardware store, and I am concerned that perhaps I've bought in a disease, a fungal disease. When I looked up what it looked like, oh my god, that noise. That noise is my little solar waterer, which I wouldn't expect to be working today given it's so overcast. Anyway, this. So I have pulled most of those out. This bed was heavily amended before I went away at Christmas time because I just chucked everything on it to clean everything up. It had manure, seaweed pellets. I had put the mixture of, what were they? It was a powder of all the little micronutrients and stuff. So it's possible that this bed is already heavy in nitrogen and they were just over fertilized when I put the fish emulsion on it. So I mean, I do have some in the other garden bed which are still struggling from exactly the same punnet, so I am considering testing those other ones with some fungicide, natural fungicide, to see whether it is a fungicide or whether I've just over nitrogened them. Behind here I have chard and I have some shallots growing all around them. Also got some onions from a $1 punnet that I rescued, and I don't really take onion growing seriously here because of our climate. However, these are doing okay, so perhaps I will dig them back in and put some mulch around them. We have some coriander volunteers coming up from seed that was here last year, which is great because we love coriander. So you can see the tomatoes from the back. I do trim up their leaves a little bit at the bottom when they start to look a bit raggedy, and it's not that they've got a disease when they're yellow and brown, it's just that they're old leaves. So, you know, if you've got leaves on there that are old, pluck them off. There's not a problem. If all the rest of your plant looks great, you don't have a fungal disease or blight or anything like that. Look, we've got some little tomatoes here already. Lovely. Okay, over to the other side. This garden bed here was a chock-a-block with this. It's called Mother-in-Law's Tongue. It's an absolute menace and pulls straight out of the ground like that. However, the root of it is like that, and it is full, absolutely ties the whole bed up. It can go down a foot. I have dug down into this garden deep to get rid of it. It's still in there, it's still coming up. There was also a hedge along here, and that's why it got such a foothold, because it was growing up under the hedge. The hedge had ended its life, basically. It was just old. So I tidied it all up. I dug out the Mother-in-Law's Tongue. But this here, this bed then ends up being not so great. Mostly because I've dug it all up, so all the microbes in it would have literally just aired out. I wasn't sure whether I was going to keep this garden bed this year or turn it back to grass. Last year, because it was all light and fluffy after I dug up all the Mother-in-Law's Tongue, I decided to plant in it, and the plants did really well. And this year, I guess because the microbes all dried out, it hasn't done so well. But I've got some black Russian tomatoes, some melissa and parsley, oregano, capsicums and other herbs. I've already had some radish in there, and I've got black radish, which is a long season radish, in there at the moment as well. I've put some seeds in there, and I'm decided I'm just going to use this bed to test my homemade fertilizers. I'll amend the bed and see how it rolls. As soon as I put some mulch and other compost on there, it should pick itself up. As you can see there, I've got some extra seedlings popping up. Down the bottom there, I've got asparagus that I planted last year from seed, and it's got another 2 years before we can harvest from it. So that was my first garden tour. I don't know why I'm whispering all the time, because I live on acreage. However, just bear with me while I get used to talking to the camera. It's a bit weird, but I will get there. I'm going to post these every Saturday morning, Eastern Standard Time Australia, and we'll let you know how the garden progresses. I am actually going to continually post these Saturday because I want to grow through all the seasons and show you what we can grow. We are on the border of tropic and subtropic. This year it's definitely very subtropic. It's colder. We've always got to try and guess, am I going to be able to plant them early? Do I have to wait? Is it going to be cold? So things like my pumpkins, even though I'm planting them early anyway, I'm going to make them a little hot house so they can just stay at optimum temperature that they like, so they don't struggle through that cold spells. And well, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. If you come for gardening, I hope it was informative. If you come for gossip, I'm sorry, there isn't any. And I hope that you are growing things for yourself, or you're getting something in the garden. I hope this inspires you to get something in the garden. I think the more that you can grow for yourself and eat, the better off you're going to be financially and physically. And I hope that you join me again for the next one. I'll have videos during the week, but this particular garden video will come out, the garden tours will come out every Saturday morning, and you'll be able to see the progress as I do. Thanks. See ya.